Welcome to the Sex Science Podcast, where we turn the latest peer-reviewed research on intimacy and sexuality into fun, accessible conversations. Generated by AI and fact-checked by experts, the Sex Science Podcast was created by LaShaw to empower you through knowledge. So, join us as we explore pleasure, relationships, human connection, and everything in between.
You know, you might think you have a handle on what webcam modeling is all about, maybe just the surface level stuff.
Right, but there's often this whole complex world operating just underneath that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're doing today, right? Taking a deep dive into the realities these models face.
We are, specifically looking at the factors, the different things that shape the boundaries they set in their work.
And we've got this really fascinating research article to guide us. It's called The Boundaries of Business and Pleasure.
Oh, yeah. The one looking at personal, social, and legal factors.
That's the one. And the great thing is it's based on interviews, actual conversations with 23 webcam models in North America. So it gives us a proper look.
Mm-hmm. And our mission today, for you listening, is really to get past those surface assumptions.
Right. To really understand how they navigate things.
Yeah, how they navigate their professional lives. We want to look at the personal choices, the societal pressures, the legal stuff they deal with.
And see how they actively shape their own work within all that.
Exactly. Agency is a big part of it.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with something really fundamental, their personal boundaries.
Okay.
Now, the study points out these are basically the rules they set for themselves, based on like what they prefer, what they want, or even their own sense of right and wrong.
And having those clear lines is super important, isn't it? For their own well-being, but also just for telling clients what's okay and what's not. Barton's work highlighted that.
Totally. Clear communication.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, drawing on Wisley's research with dancers, is that these boundaries aren't fixed. They're not set in stone.
Oh, right. They can change.
Yeah, they can be fluid. You know, someone gets more experience, maybe they get more comfortable.
Maybe financial needs shift things.
Exactly. Or financial incentives. So what they're willing to do can really evolve over time. It's dynamic.
We definitely see that in the interviews. Like Veronica, she'd been doing it for over 10 years. And she started out super cautious, like wouldn't even take her clothes off initially.
Wow, okay.
But then bit by bit, she expanded what she did. Ended up exploring all sorts of performances.
And then there was Tony, right, who started more vanilla.
Yeah, traditional stuff.
Yeah.
But then he moved into more specialized fetish content as he got more used to performing. So quite a shift.
It shows that evolution. And another big factor shaping these personal lines is, well, pleasure.
Pleasure. Like actual enjoyment.
Yeah, both sexual and like emotional connection or affective pleasure. Jones's work really brings this out. The enjoyment they get from certain interactions, that can directly motivate what they choose to do.
Huh. So it's not just about the money or meeting demands.
Not always. It's this interplay between the work and their own, personal experience.
Like Emma's story about JY scenes. Jerk-off instructions.
Right. She was hesitant at first.
Yeah, but she looked into it, tried it, and found she actually liked it.
And the positive feedback probably helped.
Oh, for sure. It encouraged her to keep doing it.
And then Jenna, discovering she preferred being dominant through doing the work.
Yeah, that changed everything for her. The kind of shows she offered. It's like the job itself led to some self-discovery.
Which brings us to another really key aspect, moral subjectivities.
Okay, so how they decide what feels right or wrong for them in their performances.
Exactly. The research touches on this, referencing Keene and Kof. And it's pretty striking how diverse those personal codes can be.
Taylor's story really stood out for me there.
The drive-through incident?
Yeah. Early on, they did scenes where clients flashed people at drive-thrus, but then a client actually did it in real life.
Oh, wow.
And that was a huge turning point. Taylor realized the potential harm, the trauma, and set a really firm boundary. No encouraging real-world stuff like that.
So no more incorporating real people the client knew into fantasies either.
Nope. Refused to do it. It shows this sense of responsibility some feel, about the impact beyond the screen.
That's a powerful example of a moral line hardening based on real-world consequences. But then the study also shows the flip side.
Like Samantha.
Yeah, Samantha was actually open to including real people in role play. Which just shows there's no single ethical rulebook here. It's deeply personal.
And life happens too, right? Like Emma getting pregnant unexpectedly.
Right. That forced her to really think about her moral boundaries again.
She grappled with, fetishizing her own pregnancy.
And decided against it, even while saying, other models might choose differently, and that's okay for them.
Yeah, it shows how personal situations can make you reevaluate everything.
And the whole discussion around specific kinks and fantasies is fascinating, too. How they rationalize what they will or won't do.
Sophie's approach to age play was interesting.
Setting limits based on her appearance.
Yeah, she wouldn't portray someone too young because it felt really wrong based on how she looked. It created distance, I guess.
And she had rules within those scenes, too, right? Like always initiating.
Exactly. Maintain some control in a potentially tricky scenario.
But then you contrast that with Vicky.
Oh, yeah, she had a very different take on how far is too far.
Almost like pushing boundaries was the exciting part for everyone involved.
But even she had lines. She wouldn't do anything she felt was degrading or abusive towards clients.
Because her goal was still a positive experience for them. It's nuanced, isn't it?
Very. It really drives home how individual it all is. Motivations, values.
For some, like Blake and Quinn, their own enjoyment is a big driver.
Blake liked wearing lingerie, even if not every customer got it.
And Quinn's genuine enthusiasm apparently came across really well to clients.
So their personal enjoyment kind of becomes part of the professional package.
And relationships matter too. Boundaries can shift based on trust with a particular client.
Like Emma being more willing to do things like blackmail role play with regulars she trusted.
Yeah, even knowing the legal gray areas. But then Whitney was much stricter, maybe wanting more professional distance, less risk.
Which is understandable because boundaries do get crossed without consent sometimes. The study doesn't shy away from that.
No, Megan's experience with the glow stick, that was disturbing.
And Sophie's cam-to-cam encounter, really unsettling stuff.
Yeah. And Sophie's ability to keep going after something like that, the study links it to Jones's idea of an ethos of resiliency. It's quite something.
It really flags a tough part of the job, though. Giving models control is empowering, sure.
But it also means exposure to things that are uncomfortable, maybe even traumatizing. And as Stegeman noted, there often aren't big consequences for clients who cross lines.
Yeah, that power dynamic isn't always balanced.
So, wrapping up the personal boundary part, it seems models mostly shape shows around their likes, skills, comfort levels. Pleasure is often a key driver.
But they can be flexible sometimes. For humor, curiosity.
Or with trusted clients, yeah.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing negotiation between desire, comfort, self-understanding, often shaped right there in the moment during interactions.
Okay, so we've got the personal side. But we don't exist in a vacuum, do we? Society, social norms, they push and pull too.
Definitely. Which brings us to social boundaries. The study uses Goffman's work on stigma here.
Right, being linked to stigmatized work can lead to discrimination, isolation.
And sex work, even online, still carries a lot of that weight. Maybe webcamming is seen as, less dirty than in-person work, as Rodriguez and Scortino found.
But the stigma's still there.
Absolutely. And these social norms really kick in when you talk about taboo fantasies.
Things like race play, age play, consensual non-consent, incest play.
Yeah. Doing those performances comes with a real risk of social backlash. Public shaming, getting canceled on social media.
Like Anna's experience.
Yeah.
With the Ahego face controversy on Twitter.
Exactly. Shows how fast things can blow up and how contested these lines are online, even for something seemingly small.
And looking at race play specifically, there were really different views.
Jenna had dabbled, but she was really worried about social media attacks and also struggled with the morality of it, which connects back to those broader structures of racism Jones talks about.
But Sophie, who identified as white, didn't seem as concerned. Maybe different social positions, different views.
Could be. Maybe more libertarian leanings. And then Lila, being mixed race and often performing with a black partner. Maybe she faced less stigma around certain types of shows because of her identity. It's complex.
Another big social boundary issue is capping, right?
Ah, yes, recording and re-uploading performances without consent.
Samantha was really anxious about that. What if a taboo performance got recorded and spread everywhere?
Yeah, that fear can seriously limit what models feel safe creating. It's a huge violation of control and privacy.
So summing up social boundaries, norms and stigma definitely restrict what models do.
Big time. But the research also shows some models do engage in taboo stuff anyway, despite the risks. It's always this trade-off, this negotiation between expressing themselves and worrying about social fallout.
Okay, personal, social, another big one, maybe. You can't really set boundaries at work without thinking about the rules, formal and informal.
Illegal boundaries. Or maybe legal-ish boundaries sometimes.
Yeah. The study makes it clear models work within the rules set by the platforms, the terms of service, or TOS.
And Stewart's research found these TOS are often pretty similar across different campsites.
And crucially, these rules aren't just made up by the platforms in isolation.
No way. Yeah. They're shaped by U.S. law, definitely, but also massively by the payment processors, the companies handling the money.
Right. BB, Jones, Stardust, and others have shown that. And those processors can be way more conservative than the actual law.
Which pushes the platforms to be even more restrictive in their own rules.
So what happens if a model breaks the 2S?
Well, the risk is getting suspended temporarily or even banned for good, which, as Jones and Stewart pointed out, is devastating. Lose your income, lose your audience connection.
And how do they get caught? Platform monitoring.
Yeah, platform monitoring systems, but also other users reporting them. Though the study also mentions, citing Blunt and Stardust and Stegeman, that the rules can be kind of vague sometimes or enforced inconsistently.
Creates uncertainty for the models, I bet.
For sure. And the list of banned stuff is interesting too.
Like no blood, asphyxiation, breastfeeding.
Fisting, sleeping on camera, certain toys, bodily fluids, obviously illegal acts.
But the kicker is, some of that stuff isn't actually illegal offline, is it? Federosi and Thornycroft pointed that out.
Exactly. There's this gap between the platform rules and the wider law.
Which leads into that idea of legal consciousness from Mary and Ewick and Silby.
Right, which is basically how people understand and interact with rules, both official laws and platform rules, treating them both as law in their working lives.
So how do models interact with these rules?
Lots of ways. Some operate before the law. They just accept the 2S as fixed, even if they disagree with parts, like Melanie hating the period blood ban, but accepting bans on other things.
Okay. And others might be more against the law, pushing back.
Yeah, expressing frustration or challenging the limits. But the study brings up this really cool new idea operating between the laws.
Between the laws? What's that?
Strategically playing in the gap between the platform's 2S and actual legal rules.
Ah, okay. Like Lexi.
Exactly. Willing to break the 2S if the act itself wasn't illegal, like that defecation request she fulfilled using makeup.
Her risk there was getting banned from the site.
Yeah.
Not arrested.
Precisely. And Sophie, understanding the legal nuances around depicting minors in fantasy fits here too. She knew age play could get her banned from the platform.
But she also knew the law protected her as long as no actual minor was involved.
Right. It's this calculated risk assessment, platform ban versus legal trouble. That's key to working between the laws.
But not everyone's comfortable there. Rachel accidentally broke the 2S on age play.
Yeah, and it made her way more cautious afterwards. Didn't want to risk it again.
And Emma initially hesitating over that blackmail request shows how blurry the lines can feel. Where does fantasy stop and legal risks start?
Although she later did similar things selectively with trusted clients. So, again, nuanced navigation based on trust.
Then there's working with the law or under the law.
Yeah, like Fritzvold described it, Taylor renaming her hypnosis shows to mindfuck to get around a platform ban. Classic creative workaround.
Or Samantha finding ways around the squirting rule to do urination requests using urine. That's clever manipulation of the system.
Definitely working with the rules, bending them to fit.
Though for some models doing more mainstream stuff like Whitney and Natalie.
For them, the 2S and legal stuff wasn't always top of mind. Their boundaries were more about personal comfort.
And lastly, models use the platform tools themselves, right?
Yeah.
Silencing, blocking users.
Yeah, reporting people. That's another way of working with the law of the platform to enforce their own boundaries, even if those tools aren't perfect.
So looking at the legal side, it's clear models have all these different ways of dealing with the rules, from just accepting them to finding clever ways around them.
And it's all shaped by their own risk assessment and personal sense of what's okay.
Okay, so bringing it all together, it seems pretty clear these boundaries aren't just handed down.
Not at all. They're actively, constantly being shaped. It's this really complex mix of their own desires, social pressures and norms, and these multi-layered legal frameworks, platform rules, and actual laws.
And what really comes through is the agency they have within all that. They're not just passive.
No, they're making choices, drawing lines, finding ways to work in this really complicated space.
Which leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on, doesn't it?
I think so. Like, given all these different factors, personal, social, legal, how does our wider understanding of work and intimacy and regulation need to change in this digital world?
Yeah, what does this tell us about how we decide what's acceptable behavior or expression online and off? Those boundaries seem to be constantly shifting.
Definitely something to keep thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for exploring that with us today. We hope this deep dive gave you some new perspectives.
Thank you for listening to the Sex Science Podcast brought to you by LaShaw. We hope that you learned something new about the wonderful world of human intimacy and sexuality, and join us next time as we dive into more fascinating research. And remember, science is for you. Music for this podcast was produced by SOUNDRAW.